issue with the governor down in Florida. But before I get started, for all you people in Indy, if you get a subpoena to appear for jury duty, please show up. The second thing is that I want to make an announcement. Write this down. We're going to have the Cedric Richmond, the chief advisor to President Biden, going to be here in Indianapolis next Friday at Olivet at 6 o'clock. Please contact the church and make sure that you're in the house. It's a historic event, whereas the second highest ranking person in the White House, he recently left and is over the DNC Get Out the Vote effort this fall. But please show up and support this worthy cause, because we're going to talk about some interesting things in terms of voter protection and things like that. And you need to be in the house at that time. So make sure you show up. And don't forget also, early voting is going to start in October. Make sure that your friends and neighbors are properly registered to vote. With all the crazy things going on in our country, the vote still is the most important thing you can do as a citizen. And I urge you, make sure your neighbors, your friend, and everyone else are properly registered. And Indianapolis has made it super easy to vote now, because you can vote anywhere because it's electronic. And so you have no excuse. I want to make sure we don't have that dismal showing we had in the spring balloting. Turnout was like 9%. It was just embarrassing. And so it doesn't take long to vote. So many people sacrifice their life and their health and well-being to give you the opportunity to vote. And don't take that lightly. Also, if you get that subpoena to appear for jury duty, make sure you show up. We're now back trying cases again, and we need to make sure that you're in the house if you get a subpoena. Having said that, we'll start off real quickly with Dr. Helen Bird, noted educator from South Florida, who was a principal administrator in the Florida school system. Dr. Bird, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Now,
how are you?
I'm doing great. Dr. Bird, I've been reading on the news some strange thing. Your governor in Florida, DeSantis, apparently you've passed a bill that now try to govern how teachers teach in the classroom. Tell us about what's going on down there in your Florida educational system.
Well, there are several things that are going on that are not good things. And one of them in particular is the Anti-Woke Act that they voted on. And the critics of this act call it the Don't Say Gay Act. And what he has done is he has put parents against teachers by giving parents, the moms of liberty, the power to have any child who speaks with the teacher in confidence. That teacher have to report whatever the child says to the parent. And they can absolutely not talk about issues that are related to whether they feel they are gay or whatever regarding sexuality. And he also has crafted a law, critical race theory law, and he rejected all of the textbooks that were being purchased for civics education. And they actually redrew the maps in the books to make it appear as if slavery wasn't that prevalent in the United States, that slavery was more prevalent in the Central American region, not the American region, but Central America, such as Brazil and those countries. And slavery was just a small part of the American story. And they also tried to make slavery appear as if it was strictly something that was done with all parties involved cooperating in the economic system in America.
Hey, Dr. Bird, why in the world would any teacher want to teach with those type of constraints? I mean, it sounds like it's idiotic. It's First Amendment. It just come to my mind. You now got to put a muzzle on teacher. Well, what do you teach if you can't teach the true history of America? I mean, how do you go about doing that? I don't understand.
Well, they're trying to whitewash all of the historical aspects of what occurred in America or what happened. And what he's done is he has a great teacher shortage. He has crafted a law so that a person with a high school diploma can teach under the mentorship of a certified teacher. And these people are, I've heard that it's not many takers, especially firemen and policemen and those people who have been in the service. They're being given the opportunity to come in and teach without a degree.
So, by the way, listen, our phone number is 833-653-3529, 833-653-3529. Now, Dr. Bird, that's nonsensical. It's almost like we're dumbing down the education process to a third world country. Teachers go through an extraordinary amount of training now. You have 4 years of college, then you have to have a student teacher where you're specifically trained and mentored. And so all this structure has been around for a long time and our educational system has worked. Now, that sounds like such a radical departure. Would that likely result in the dumbing down of our students?
It most certainly will, and it's not welcomed in a lot of districts. You have just a few districts that are embracing this concept, and it hasn't taken hold because most people understand who have children that it takes a highly trained individual to deliver effective instruction to students. It's not as easy as it seems to some people. And so what he's doing is just, he's running the state like a dictator. Yesterday, he went to arrest 20 people who he alleged voted fraudulently that were ex-felons. And we know that we voted for that law, but he blocked it and is making these people who are past felons pay hefty fees and fines before they're allowed to vote. And his whole system is so it's not organized so that people can go through the system and get their rights restored. It's a lot going on in Florida. We need a lot of help here.
Sure.
Go ahead, Milton.
Yeah.
I'm just horrified listening to what she's saying is happening here, because I'm working on a case in Utah where the teachers didn't do their job and the school didn't do their job, and a little 10-year-old girl goes home and hang herself because they didn't intervene to save her, protect her. And my partner is a teacher. She's just gotten back into it a year ago, and she's training every weekend. She's training after school. They require this and they're requiring that in California. But what Dr. Burke is talking about is going back to pre-slavery type stuff. It's crazy.
Yes, it is. And it's continuing and continuing. Every other week he has a new law, and it's always punitive toward people of color and toward certain professions that he doesn't respect, that he feels is a threat to him in some way. And he seeks to punish them the same way that he did Disney World when he attacked them because they came out against that Don't Say Gay law. And he changed their status in Florida as a punishment. So it's a lot, like I said, going on, and the battles are being waged, but it's so many fronts that we have to fight on until it's just very difficult. But we're not giving up the fight. We're going to continue to fight on every front and try to unseat him.
Well, your primary is today, isn't it?
No, it's Tuesday. This is the last day for early voting. We had early voting for 10 days, and this is the last day to cast a ballot in the early voting period.
How's the voter turnout coming down there in Florida right now? You got all the crazy stuff going on with the Trump taking classified material I guess, to use as a bargain or something. But how's the voter turnout in your area going?
I need to check on it this weekend. It seemed like it was very light, but it's hard to tell because a lot of people did still do the mail-in ballots, especially people who had jobs and felt that they may not be able to make it to the polls on Tuesday. They did the mail-in ballot. And so I know they're in the process of counting those. But what I observed when I went to vote early, it was a very light turnout. But I know that was just one day. I'm going to call our zone leader today and check up on it because we're trying to cover all of the polling areas, voting areas, and see how we're going with that in our zone.
Attorney Grimes, you had a follow-up?
I don't know what to say. It's horrible. What's happening in our schools? God? He wants high school graduates to teach our kids in school.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There is so much out here and techniques and equipment and tools for learning that we can't keep up with. I mean, it's a struggle to just for teachers to keep up with it. And he is he's dumbing that down. He's going back to the old one-room schoolhouse techniques and just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just sad because I'm studying what the teachers are supposed to be doing out in Utah. You're not supposed to even if you see a kid that's look like they are homeless or coming from a homeless family, you're supposed to intervene. You're supposed to look after that kid. You're supposed to contact the family to see if they need help. The government got all kinds of laws in place that can be used to teach kids with and help kids and help poor kids. And I can just see the teachers that you're talking about are untrained and uneducated being in those positions. They're going to be overlooking kids. They're going to be, using the old school techniques of putting down kids, not building them up. It's a serious situation that she's describing to me.
It is. Fortunately, it has not taken hold well. And one other thing he's doing is he's using his campaign money his campaign finance money to campaign for school board candidates to make sure that he put people on the school boards, the local school boards in each area that are favorable toward his ideas.
Man, that's terrible. You don't sound like that's a democracy. That sounds like
it sounds like it's Trumpism is what it sounds like. You do what you want to do and not what the people want.
Well, yes, that's true. Excuse me 1 minute. I'm sorry.
Oh, you good.
Okay. The door. Someone at the door.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bird, for your excellent report. And we'll check back and hopefully that they got voted out of office. It sounds like he's borderline insane.
Nathaniel, I have someone told me who once clerked in the Supreme Court, said that Clarence Thomas had a banner in his chambers. Essentially, it said, "I will not support any ideas of the liberals, etc." Basically, he was going to get revenge on what he thought was a scorching of his
confirmation.
Yeah. And he has stuck to that, and his rulings reflect that man doesn't care what's necessarily the right thing or the rational thing to do, but he voted for laws that put down minorities, and he seems to have held to his promise that he's not going to side with anything the liberals want, whether it's right or wrong. Now that sounds dumb, but I'm telling you, that's what I was told by a person who observed it when they were clerking there in the Supreme Court. And he succeeded somewhat in fulfilling that promise. Just like I sent you that article in the newspaper last week about the Arizona election. Pence and them can't overpower this man. He's got people who believe in him 100%. They don't care what the truth is. They don't care what the benefit to the public is. They have a personal agenda. And so we can shake our heads and think, oh, it won't take hold, but we got to do something about it.
Well, let me give you some quick statistics and to tell. See, the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, made a mistake this week by saying, in trying to discount what the Biden administration had done, he said, "Oh, we're better off today than we were 2 years ago." He was dumb enough to say that, and I'm thinking that he completely lost sight of history. 2 years ago, where were we at? We had thousands of people dying every day because of COVID, because of government malpractice. We had a record deficit between 1919 and 2018. The federal deficit 2016 was 21 trillion. In 42 months, it went to $28 trillion. So we had an administration that did 25% of the federal deficit in 3.5 years based on the whole history of the country. It was insane. And there was a whole list of things. Unemployment rate went up to like 10%. We had, under the prior leadership, we had the lowest amount of job gain and the highest job loss in the history of America since the Great Depression. There was a net job loss under the prior administration of 3.5 million people. Now in America, we have 11.5 open jobs and about 4.7 million people seeking jobs. We've lowered the deficit. We came up with sufficient revenue to do something extraordinary. Everybody who wanted to take a virus protection, it was free. We had a whole list of things like that, about 100 or so things. Now, everywhere you go, there's construction projects. The bridges, the roadways, there's $1 trillion for repairs of roads and bridges in every state. And nobody apparently paying attention to all this construction is going on. Well, that's because of current administration. They saw all these weaknesses in American construction and they're fixing it. And so when I see that these popularity and they say how great the prior administration was, they have completely lost sight of history, coupled with the fact that they try to overthrow American democracy. What troubled me, Milton, the next issue I want to talk to you about before we talk to the LA case is this. We had a former president who apparently take top secret documents from the White House and store them at a resort area. And his former lawyer says, Michael Cohen, you know, whether you like Michael Cohen or not, he said that he was using that, he thought, for leverage. So if he got indicted, he could say, look, unless you drop these charges, look what I can give to the Russians or the Chinese people. You know, got nuclear information, all type of secrets that he could have obtained. And I was troubled by that. I said, what? So the president, the ex-president of the United States, he suggested could blackmail the United States of America. I thought that was an insane idea. But on the other hand, why do you take top secret documents with you when you leave the White House?
Nate, let me just say a few words about the previous subject, and then I address this one about the top secret documents. It's he who controls or she who controls the narrative who wins the argument. I think I mentioned to you once before in that book I read about Robert E. Lee and me, and the author saying there are a lot of people in the South to this day. There are a lot of people, millions, who believe that the Confederacy won the Civil War. And the spin is that Robert E. Lee is a great hero, when in fact he was a traitor. But it's who controls the narrative and who controls the spin. Somewhere along the line, psychologists have figured out if you repeat your position enough in the face of no matter what the truth is, the people will believe you if you spin it right and if you hit the emotions of it. And that's what they're still doing. That's an old technique. They used it in the wars. They're using it today. Trump is using it still. And so don't be surprised that they're not paying attention to your facts or your data that the country is better off today than it was 2 years ago. They are saying the country was better off 2 years ago than it is today. And they're going to keep saying that and spinning it. And there are a bunch of people who are going to believe it. That's just the way it is. As to this man keeping documents at his home, I'm sure he's going to have to him a rational reason for doing so. He was either in the midst of negotiating, or he was studying, or it was okay when he was president and he just has not had a chance to remove them or return them to the government. But it's scary, the stuff that Donald Trump has gotten away with, the way he has broken the laws and just done what he wants to do, regardless of what the consequences could be. And this is another example of it. We couldn't take it down in 2 attempts to impeach him. He laughed at us. He could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody properly.
Yeah, but I was concerned that even if you're a large MAGA, Make America Great proponent, at some point, how do you justify anyone taking government secret that can be used to destroy America? You know, in the old day, we call that person a traitor. It was bad enough when he went before the Russian president and said he believed the Russian dictator over the American intelligence agency. I mean, that was the ultimate sin of any president that would have got anybody removed from office, saying something so ridiculous. But instead, somehow it got embraced. So now we become fans of dictators like Putin and the Kim Jong and all these dictators, and then democracy is at the closest point since the Civil War been overturned. We saw people, and I've been watching this rhetoric, this hate stuff, after they executed a search warrant, all of a sudden, we had people wanting to go out and kill FBI agents.
Mm-hmm.
That was bizarre to me. I'm thinking, you're going to attack the FBI? And, you know, I was saying, where does this insanity stop? I was floored by the fact that somehow they thought that was a good idea.
Didn't I read or either heard, and I can't say which it was, that the names of some of the FBI agents who went to Mar-a-Lago for that search, that some of Trump supporters are after them?
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, let's take one caller real quickly, Attorney Grimes. Let me see. Pierre Pullins, you have a question or comment for us?
Oh, good afternoon, Nate and Milton. Here's my thoughts on what's going on with the country. Essentially, the 2000 midterms are going to be a referendum on Biden. So, I mean, I haven't seen, and we need to start thinking about running commercials with him and Biden. He needs to take the lead. He needs to, to preach about the Democratic successes. I mean, they just handed the man a great success going into November, but I still hear these columnists and TV people talking about, we're going into a recession. Well, people are still working. And Kamala Harris needs to step her game up. I don't know if she's being held back in the maybe Milton might have some opinions on that, but she needs to step her game up, work half the country, do something. The other thing is the rap community, the rockers, all these artists. I mean, do they think they're going to carry on mega tours in a country torn by racial strife? I mean, they're just not stepping up either. I mean, Hollywood, black performers, everybody's being silent on this thing, man, and I just don't understand it. Democracy is, this is probably the most important election in the history of this country coming up, and people are just oblivious to what's going on. But thank you for taking my call.
Well, I'm glad you brought that out because I think that what has happened, Mr. Pullen, is this. We've had so many things that the Biden administration has done until it's not publicized. I think it's a matter of messaging. In fact, if you compare any administration of any person who held the office of president going back to Abraham Lincoln, that there's been, other than Lincoln, there's been no president that has a more profound effect in terms of legislation. For example, the worst thing that I think that happened during my lifetime is this COVID-19. It shut down the courts. The government paid people to stay at home and not work. Unemployment went off the roof. We had record poverty. People dying every day. Every day. We had so many dead bodies until they had no place to put these dead bodies. Unemployment went off the hook, and nobody escaped this. Everybody would know somebody who got sick or somebody who died because of this. And then it got worse because we allowed the weapons ban, automatic weapons ban to expire. Under his leadership, we had the highest number of mass shootings in the history of America. We went from used to about 100 a year to like 677. So all these things happen, and yet somehow I look at the poll number, it doesn't reflect actually what he's done. And I think that's a matter of marketing because the unemployment rate under Biden is under 4%. It's like 3.8, 3.7%, which is insane. But here's the thing. We have more jobs than people to fill them. We have 11.5 million jobs open in America. And so the point I'm making is that we have all these things in place now, and we need to have people to do their own research to see what's going on, because all these things right in front of you. Every day you drive along the roadway, you see repairs. Well, that's federal dollars.
Well, people are too busy to do their own research necessarily, Nate. I know it's hard for me to keep up with just the limited requirement you put on me to get ready for this program. It's just I'm racing all the time, it seems like. So I can understand people not in tune to all of the things that this administration is doing, and they're going to take what somebody else says it's not doing. So it seems that it's incumbent upon this administration to put its spin doctors out there, to put its PR people out there, to be putting what you're saying, these facts in front of the public, because we're in this war with the other side saying he's not doing anything. So we can keep complaining about this, but it seems as though the Biden people need to be putting him up a little higher.
Well, one thing I'm doing here locally, I'm sponsoring Save Richmond is going to be here in Indianapolis next Friday at Olivet at 6 o'clock. So people can ask about what they've been doing. But there was over 100 things I think is important that we continue to educate people so that we don't get leaders like what Dr. Bird is talking about that's going on down in Florida. My goodness, we have the draconian abortion bill hit here in Indiana. And so I think in 1921 is when women got the right to vote in America. Mm-hmm. And so a century later, the rights that they gained over all these years has now been eradicated. And so we see this leadership that got to affect everybody, and it's all around you. And every day we wake up. You're fortunate, Attorney Grimes, that you live in California. You know, you sound like you have rational leaders. I saw they did the recall. You had that nutcase running for governor who was a Trump type guy. Larry Ellis, was that his name?
Oh, why are you bringing that man's name up? I hadn't heard it in a while. Yeah.
But it was all like he's the Antichrist or something. You know, the guy was like a demon. I was looking at what he was espousing, and it bothers me that they put a guy like that to run for governor. And now we have these candidates that are popping up all over the country, and we just don't have the voter enthusiasm that we did in the 2020 election at this point. Hopefully we see an uptick in that, you know. But Attorney Grimes, one final comment on this issue, then we'll talk about your case, the big case going out there in California.
One final comment about which issue, Nate?
About the school issue, but I tell you, we'll move on. You got one of the biggest cases going on in the country now out there in your courts. Kobe Bryant Woodrow sued the LA Sheriff Department. Looked like that they get sued all the time for all kind of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've had some personal experience with those folks and dealing with your clients with them. But I didn't understand this. The way I understand it, a husband had a tragic death, Kobe Bryant, one of the most famous athletes on the planet, very wealthy young man. And the sheriff deputies took photographs of the crash scene, including the decedent. And so lawsuit is filed by the widow, his wife, for negligent infliction of emotional distress. And the trial is being conducted. And I was watching it, and it was just a curious case to me because not every state actually allow for this type of cause of action.
Right.
So have you been able to pay attention to what's going on in that case?
I grabbed one of the newspaper headlines from last week when the trial first started, and it says, the photos were flashed from a sheriff deputy's phone screen to a bartender in Norwalk. They were shown to firefighters at an awards gala at the Hilton Hotel in Universal City. They were shared from one deputy to another while the men played video games, Call of Duty, while they played the video game Call of Duty. They were, let me just finish this. First responders took pictures of broken bodies, Bryant's attorney said. They took close-up of limbs, of burnt flesh. It would shock the conscience. That's what the firemen and police did when they went to this crash. They took pictures, and I've heard the description of how horrific his little girl's body was and his body was, and pieces here and there. They took pictures of all of that so that they could have something to talk about at their gatherings and show each other that they have the inside. And yeah, it's horrifying, and it would hurt, it would hurt anybody to see their family members' devastating destruction shown around like that for laughs, for enjoyment, or whatever. So that's what has happened. Well,
here's what I don't get though. The widow would have heard about that, but she would not have been present at the gala where they showed it, or in the fire department when they showed the firemen, in these other places at the time they were showing these horrific photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And so emotional distress, like in our state, is based upon you actually witnessing an event
mm-hmm.
as a bystander or being part of the event, like, debris struck you, or you actually saw the event of a relative so horrifying. Here, it's based upon the third person who receives it. And I was trying to get the connection as to how did the widow actually see this horrifying photograph. And the second part of that, of course, is that every investigation like this, there'd be at least 1,000 photographs taken for investigatory purposes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have to and then you have to try to reconstruct the aircraft to find out what was the failure, like NTSB. They will reconstruct, I've been involved in some of these litigations. They put it in a hangar, they reconstruct it step by step to try to determine what caused the failure for future safety reasons. So you do all this stuff automatically, and everything is carefully photographed, right? So when they do autopsies, decedent bodies are, I've been around this for a long time. I do a lot of wrongful death, and they take, in the typical autopsy that I get between 40 to 200 photographs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty gruesome type evidence, right? So
the stitches are visible, and the whole body looks like it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I get the type of evidence on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have to do in order to evaluate evidence to develop a case.
Okay.
And so, I was trying to get the connection. Okay, did they make money off of showing this, or this was a personal gratification, of what
There,
happened.
there is some saying that some of these pictures were sold to some of the different magazines and newspapers. But Nate, I don't know if money would be a criteria that, for me personally, I can think that I'm entitled to privacy and expectation of privacy, where the people coming in to render assistance or help or whatever the responsibility is, that they would not disrespect or violate my expectation of privacy and confidence. And when you start showing what you have been allowed to see because of your job and your profession, and go against the rules of that job or profession, and I know that you are disseminating this view of my family, these pictures of my family, my horror, I think that it can be shown that that causes me a lot of emotional distress, because I'm sitting here thinking about a loved one or loved ones that I have lost. I'm not going to get personal about it any more than that, but I would not like to think about the hospital or the police displaying these pictures of my loved one. So I connect with that claim of damage. Every time I'm going to hear about it. I may never see those photos, but I'm going to hear about it. I know people are using it for whatever their purpose. So I think that the people who have created this type of pain in me should compensate, should be punished. And punishment probably is only in the form of money, as you know. So I see that as a damage, if that's what you're asking.
But I'm in favor, just report back next week. I'd like to see how they frame a closing argument, because they're seeking millions of dollars. And I'm trying to see how, because your law is much better than the laws in our state by far. In our state, it's a much more stringent type task.
You have to personally be, yeah.
See, we're like a modified impact type state, and which basically you have to be close to the catastrophic loss, and there can be changes between the death. There can be an alteration, or otherwise the evidence not admissible. So in other words, if your wife is killed in a car crash,
I got that.
You're like a minute away, you come to the scene, you see the blood and all that stuff, then you have a negligence. But on the other hand, if your wife is killed in a car crash and the paramedics are already there taking her out of the car, that team's distinction, it's not admissible, because we have a much more stringent evidentiary rule on this issue in our state currently. And, so from that standpoint, here, they take the pictures, and the wife, the widow, I like to find out whether or not she actually had seen the adverse evidence, or did they report on the news channel, or, I was just curious as to how that developed. Now, one other, and now Pierre wanted to know also crime scene photographs. He want to know who owns crime scene photograph.
The department that is investigating the crime are responsible for the keeping and the confidentiality of those photographs. If they are involved in a lawsuit, there's usually a rule or law that they not be distributed to the public. It is only for trial purposes or litigation purposes, but I don't know of any court that would endorse the exploitation of these photographs by disseminating them to the public for money. So who owns them is the entity that took the pictures originally.
Okay. And as a general rule, so the audience can understand this, if there is an investigation that's being launched by a law enforcement agency, or are you able to get the photograph before the investigation is concluded, or generally do you have to wait until the investigation is concluded?
Generally, the investigation has to be concluded and then submitted to the DA's office or whatever the department that's responsible for pursuing or prosecuting in a criminal case. But yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, see here locally, for example, we've had a whole series of hit and run collision where people get hit and the person flee the scene. Now,
but if the public is out there and they grab their own pictures, then those are their pictures.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what I've been, what we stress to all our clients, and this is very important, like when people are involved in legal issues like car wrecks and things like that, or trip and fall, you got to take photographs now with your camera. You got to take the cameras out and take 40 to 50 photographs, take it from different angles. Because now, Milton, what I've discovered is that the police department is so overworked with these massive increase in homicide that we're seeing them do less of an investigatory process. Like there'll be eyewitnesses to accidents or eyewitness event, and they don't even put their name on the police reports, for example. So now citizens have to be more aggressive. You're talking about when citizens can get their own evidence, they have to be more aggressive in obtaining evidence now than ever before.
I think it's just sloppy police work. You said they're overworking, et cetera. As many cops as I see on the scenes of some stop or incident, it look like it's overloaded. My opinion personally, they got 15 or 20 cops out there. They just milling around, look like they got nothing to do. So I don't know if I buy into they just overworked like that. That's just
I do agree that I do see that personally also, that I think, and then one of my biggest problems is that we have several cases in our local police department where it was clear to me that there was an intent to cover up what is misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
I got a case now where a police officer, for example, ran over and killed a pedestrian, and his buddy in the same precinct never took incriminating photograph to show that he ran off the road.
Well, maybe he was too busy doing something else and they didn't have anybody available to do that, right?
No, he went out there to investigate, but his investigation of the scene was so deficient, it bothered him. Like, for example, here's some specific evidence thing. The police officer who caused the death and went to McDonald's restaurant, and he had used his onboard computer to send a text or email, right? Within less than a minute before the crash, according to him. Well, here's the problem. One way you can run off the road, if you are digging into your McDonald's bag and grabbing fries and take your eyes off the road because you directed your hand to get the bag, right? And that could cause you to look to your right and then you drift.
Right.
So when I'm looking at evidence, as I'm an investigator, I want to know whether or not the bag is open or closed. Because when you leave the restaurant, sometimes they wrap it up and then I want to see whether or not his French fries are out of the bag or they're inside, right? Very simple investigation. I'm trying to see whether or not we have a distracted driver. Well, so they take photograph, but they don't take photograph of critical evidence to show potential distraction. He doesn't get email or the data or the metadata from the onboard computer or cell phone to see whether or not he's texting and driving.
Right.
To make matters worse.
Well, those are questions that one can ask that officer who has caused that damage, and I'm sure there'll be good questions. And he can't. If you're eating and driving, you're going to be lying if you say you're not distracted at some point or another by that food. I don't care if you say you got to take you off the road a second just to, look. I mean, that's just natural. Come on.
Yeah, I know, but see what disturbed me, and this is why it's so important for citizens. In this case here, the family members were very fortunate that they hired me because I have done hundreds of these cases And we went out there to the scene right away and conducted a field investigation. We did I've gathered evidence for over 40 years, and I had specialized reconstruction training. So we were able to obtain evidence, and through the process of photogrammetry, we're able to show that the police officer ran off the road and struck and killed his pedestrian. Now we have physical evidence, scientific proof of misconduct. Now, the city of Indianapolis, though, I think that the police department have been doing this and they get away with it on a regular basis. And so now I want to make sure that our audience know that in order to hold these people accountable, you have to have the investigation done right away in every city, and particularly here. So I want to make sure that they're aware of that. Hey, one other issue that brewing in your state, your governor, he is the governor of the country's most popular state. And there's rumors, and there's all kind of rumors from around, I don't know whether you aware of this, is that he is positioning himself to run for president should President Biden decide not to run. Is that any merit in your mind?
I don't know of that rumor, but I can't see any governor of a state, especially California, with our economy and popularity and exposure, not having in the back of their mind the next step, which is the president of the United States. And so I can see that. One of the things we've had out here, just to change the subject briefly, was that the district attorney of Los Angeles, the petition for recall did not succeed. So this guy is in the seat now for another 2 years. And that is good because he's a progressive district attorney trying to change some of the laws, and this lock them up practice that every DA's office seems to be utilizing. So I'm wishing him success. But
well, think about that. But you had talked about in terms of policing, you were troubled by the fact that how the police approach some of your clients. And so if you have a district attorney that filed these bogus charges, then the rights of particular African Americans are really violated on a regular basis unless you have somebody. And I don't call them progressive. I just call them people that are seeking equal justice under the law. Right.
And you spoke of that. I read a couple of days ago about these 2 judges in Pennsylvania that were making money off of children by sentencing them to be locked up for 6 months for failure to appear or truancy, just the minor offenses. It seems as though there are a lot of judges who may be benefiting from privatized prisons and detention centers because they sure do like to lock us up. As I told you before, we're doing a motion on racial discrimination here in sentencing on a case we have. It's a horrified case, but we think that non-Blacks, whites in particular, are treated more lenient in these serious cases. So we're asking for the data to show, because out here in California, of every 100,000 white men, 126 of them are in prison. Of every 100,000 Black men, there's about 1,700 in prison. So something is wrong with that picture.
Oh, it's terrible. Hey, one final question that we've gotten several text messages. Attorney Grimes, they want to know, they have these people that kill people while they're driving cars. And one lady killed some people.
5 or 6 people out here in California.
Killed somebody, and they said that she killed a Black nurse, and she's raising a mental defense.
Yes.
How often are those mental defenses? How often do they work?
Well, I've done quite a few mental illness defenses, insanity or another form of mental illness that affects a person's state of mind. So when you say how often they work, I cannot say for certainty, but I believe that the brain, the mind is not always as strong as we want it to be in individuals, either because of a natural situation or drug or an imbalance of chemicals on the brain. I mean, I did the postpartum psychosis case where the mother took her child, 6-week-old, and put him under the car tire and drove over his head. And that horrified me. When I first heard, I thought she should rot in hell. But once I met her, I said, she's not a criminal. What the hell happened? And it turns out she had a condition that we didn't know about at the time called postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis. So I do believe in mental illness, and I know it can affect you to do horrified things. And you're hearing voices telling you to do this or do that or do something else, or you're seeing demons or walls moving. So what do? Do we put these people in prison who doing something that they have no control over? Or do we look at what caused their action? And if we can associate it with mental illness, we're supposed to be intelligent enough and advanced enough not to hold people who have a mental condition or mental illness responsible for their acts. We're supposed to give them treatment.
Hey, Turner, before we leave, what is your phone number? Somebody have a follow-up question or legal issue, particularly on the West Coast or somewhere. What's your contact number, sir?
323-295-3023.
Well, thank you very much. That's 323-295-3023 for all our listeners. Also, I'd like to thank each and every one of you to call in and send us the text messages. Thank you very much. I know that you're watching, because when I go to the grocery store, you always grab me and tell me about the show. But you can always send us text and we will respond. Also, you can reach me usually on Tuesday at 317-631-5151 for all your legal needs. Well, thank you for listening to us today. Again, this is Nathaniel Lee and my superstar guest, Milton today, and Dr. Helen Burrs. Thank you, everyone, and have a blessed day. Be safe.
Thank you. I'm gonna call you, Nate.